You're listening to the Dibbly-Dobbly Podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page as well. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Dibbly-Dobbly Podcast. On today's episode of the podcast, we review the third T20 International between New Zealand and Australia and preview the fourth T20 International from the Wellington Regional Stadium. It's the Dibbly-Dobbly Podcast, and let's get started. Let's recap the scores from the third T20 International between New Zealand and Australia. Australia batted first, made 4 for 208 from their 20 overs. Glenn Maxwell was the top scorer with 70 off 31 balls. Ish Sodhi took 2 for 32 from his 4 overs for New Zealand. New Zealand, in reply, all out for 144 in 17.1 overs. Martin Gupta was the top scorer with 43 off 28 balls. And Agar took 6 for 30 from his 4 overs for Australia. Australia won by 64 runs, and Agar was named man of the match for his 6 wickets. What were some of the key factors to deciding this match between New Zealand and Australia? Australia's batting innings was key to set up this match for Australia. Aaron Finch returning to form, scoring 69. Then Glenn Maxwell came in to blast 70 to get Australia to 208. Australia cashed in on some poor bowling from New Zealand, which cost New Zealand dearly in the end. Then Australia took wickets at regular intervals in New Zealand's innings, which stopped the momentum in the New Zealand innings, which led to the required run rate increasing with every wicket and dot ball. And when chasing over 200, you are going to struggle. So those were some of the key factors in deciding this match and led to Australia winning this match and staying in the series. Let's have a look at how New Zealand performed in this third T20 International. We'll start with their batsmen. Gupta 43, Seifert 4, Williamson 9, Conway 38, Phillips 13, Neesham 0, Chapman 18. Let's have a look at their bowlers. Sodhi took 2 wickets, a wicket each for Bolt and Southey, no wickets to Jamieson and Neesham. That's how New Zealand performed in this third T20 International as a team. I thought New Zealand didn't really play their best cricket in this game. They looked a bit off from the get-go. I think bowling first for New Zealand, they struggled a bit. They weren't at their best with the ball, leaking runs, and they didn't really execute their skills. They didn't really bowl to their plans. Didn't really bowl to their fields either. Their lines and lengths were a bit inconsistent, and Australia were able to cash in and score runs off that. So New Zealand looked a bit off with the ball, really. I think for the first time in this series, they were asked to bowl first by Kane Williamson because New Zealand won the toss in this game and chose to bowl first, whereas in the last 2 games, New Zealand batted first. And then obviously had to defend with the ball in the run chase, whereas in this game, New Zealand were asked to bowl first, and probably they just didn't get their lines and lengths right, didn't execute their skills, didn't bowl to their plans or to their field, and that's why they conceded over 208 runs. So whenever you concede 208 runs or over 200 runs at a T20 innings as a bowling side, it's not really a great performance with the ball. But for New Zealand, just didn't really look at their best with the ball today. I think missing Santner showed his capabilities in this team as a bowler. Obviously, Mitchell Santner was not available for this game due to illness. So therefore, New Zealand played Chapman as the extra batsman and had only 5 bowling options. And it really showed the absence of Santner when Neesham came on to bowl his 4 overs. He had to bowl his 4 overs because New Zealand didn't have any other bowling options because there was no Mitch Santner. And obviously, he bowled that over Neesham to Maxwell, which went for 28. And that's probably the over that cost New Zealand this game, because if that was a good over, they would have been chasing probably something like 180, maybe 190. But Maxwell took Neesham to the cleaners. That over went for 28, and therefore Australia got 208. So I think that over pretty much cost New Zealand this game. If Mitchell Santner came in and played in this game, you wouldn't have seen Neesham bowl his 4 overs. You would have seen Santner bowl his 4 overs and probably 1 or 2 overs from Neesham just to give Williamson that extra option in saving a Bolt and a Southey towards the back end of the innings. Whereas in this game, he had to bowl the 4 overs because Satner wasn't in this match. So I think that's where they miss Satner, New Zealand, because he can dual role Satner. He can take wickets, as we saw in the last game, where he took 4 wickets. New Zealand sort of missed him in this game. So if he's available for the next game, then he comes back in and obviously gives New Zealand that extra bowling option. So overall, with the ball for New Zealand, wasn't their greatest day in the field with the ball, but obviously they're a good side, and hopefully they can improve that and hopefully bounce back strongly in the 4th T20. Their fielding was okay, New Zealand, probably not up to their standards at times. They'll be looking to improve that into the next game as well. Their batting was okay. They got off to a good start, New Zealand, with the bat. Guptill got them off to a good start in the power play, but Australia were able to take wickets at regular intervals, and for New Zealand, that pretty much slowed the momentum of the innings. Wickets fell, dot balls were building up, and the required run rate was climbing. And once it gets up to around about 12, 13, 14, 15 and over, especially when you're chasing 200 runs, you're not going to win too many games. And for New Zealand, they played big shots, they got out, because the scoreboard pressure was mounting on them. And probably for the first time in this series, we saw New Zealand under pressure compared to the last 2 games, because in the first 2 games, they were asked to bat first by Australia, whereas in this game, they won the toss and chose to bowl first. So obviously, that's not a bad thing for New Zealand to try and improve their chasing skills, obviously heading into a T20 World Cup. But for them, they struggled, they lost wickets at the wrong time, they couldn't build the partnerships like Australia did. There wasn't really a big partnership that really got them close to winning this game. The partnerships were 20, 28, 32, 29, 0, 1, 6, 22, 6, 0. So those partnerships really weren't big enough to really win them this game. Whereas Australia, they were able to build partnerships after they lost a wicket. They were able to back up partnerships when they lost a wicket, and therefore they got that big score of 208. Whereas New Zealand, in the run chase, you need probably 2 big partnerships to get you these runs, and probably someone in the top order to get a big score like a Maxwell did, probably like a 70 plus, or an Aaron Finch, probably like a 60 plus score, or 100 even, to win the game. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, and therefore they lost wickets at the wrong time. The pressure mounted, the run rate climbed. They played big shots because they had to go. That's why they played those big shots, and that's why they got out and got bowled out for 144. So for New Zealand, they'll be disappointed in that batting performance. They would have backed themselves to chase the runs down because they've got a lot of match winners like Guptill, Williamson and Conway, for example, to get the runs for them. Unfortunately, it didn't work in this game, but that happens. So for New Zealand, it's just about trying to bounce back in the 4th game, because they know if New Zealand win one of the last 2 games, they pretty much win the series. But they know Australia will come back strongly in the 4th game after winning this 3rd game. So for New Zealand, it's just about trusting your processes, your routines, and backing yourselves to win the game. So for New Zealand, they're a good side. It was just a bad day at the office, and that happens in T20 cricket. But they've got to try and move forward from this and hopefully put in a better performance in the 4th T20 International. Let's have a look at how Australia performed in this 3rd T20 International. We'll start with their batsmen: Wade 5, Finch 69, Philippi 43, Maxwell 70, Stoinis 9 not out, and Mitchell Marsh 6 not out. Let's have a look at the bowlers. Agar took 6 wickets. Meredith took 2 wickets on debut. A wicket each for Kane Richardson and Adam Zampa. No wickets to Jai Richardson, Stoinis or Maxwell. So that's how Australia performed as a team in this 3rd T20 International. Good fight back from Australia to win this game. They couldn't afford to lose this game, otherwise the series would have been gone. So good fight back for Australia to win this game and to get the series back to 2-1. They've got to keep this up for the last 2 games, because when you're 2-0 down in a 5-game series, it's always hard to come back. And you have to win the next 3 in a row. For Australia, they've already won 1 out of the 3. They've got to win the next 2 to win the series. So for Australia, this will give them a lot of confidence headed into the fourth and fifth T20s of this series to try and win this series. So I think Australia play their best cricket when they're under pressure. And it really brings the best out of them. And in this game, we saw them turn up and come back and bounce back. Whereas in the first two games, they were a bit off, weren't at their best. But this is how this Australian team can play. And once it comes together, it works. Whereas in the first two games, it didn't. So for Australia, good signs heading into the fourth T20. I thought their batting was good. I thought Australia's batting was much better than it was in the first two games. Australia were able to get to 208, which was a match-winning score in the end because they won by 64 runs and bowled New Zealand out for 144. So whenever you get 200 plus in a T20 game, you're always going to back yourself in to win the game. And for Australia, they weren't going to lose this game, and it was a good total. I thought Australia did well with the partnerships in this game with the bat. In the first two games, they weren't able to back up partnerships when they lost a wicket early. Compared to this game, in the third T20, they were able to back up the partnerships after wickets were falling. So Finch and Wade obviously added 6 for the first wicket, but Philippe came in and added 83 with Aaron Finch for the second wicket. And then the third wicket, Maxwell came in with Finch, added 64. And then Stoinis came in with Maxwell and added 41 for the fourth wicket. So that's what I'm talking about, backing up the partnerships after you've lost a wicket. And Australia weren't able to do that in the first two games. But in this game, they were able to do that, which set them up to get this total of 208. So that's very important for Australia to continue that on into the next game, is to back up the partnerships after you lose a wicket. Because when you do that, then it sets you up for a big total. And for Australia, they got to 208. So very good signs there in terms of the batting there for Australia. I thought Glenn Maxwell batted well, made 70, showing what he does best to all of us around the world, showing why he's a match winner. And he came in, played his shots, and got 70. Aaron Finch was talked about in the media and the press about he should be dropped as captain. He should be dropped out of the team completely because of his form slump, but I thought he batted well for his 69. Good to see Finchy back into the runs. I thought in this game he played with a positive mindset and looked to score and putting what's happened behind him and trying to focus on scoring runs in this game. I think when Finchy's thinking in a positive mindset, he's a better player. When he's thinking a bit negative and he's in that negative mindset, that's where it backfires as a batsman because you're not in a positive frame of mind. You're not looking to score. You're saying to yourself, well, if I score a low score here, I'll probably be out because I'm in such a form slump. I can't afford to get another low score. For Finchy, he put that aside. He said, right, I'm just going to come out here, play with freedom, play with positive intent, look to score, cash in when I can. And that's what he did. So a very good comeback for Aaron Finch to score the runs. Hopefully this will spark something in him for the rest of the series and hopefully lead Australia to a series win. So overall, I thought Australia batted well. The other thing I was impressed with is that they played good cricket shots because in T20 cricket, it's not about bashing the ball and hitting the ball over the fence for 6. It's about timing as well, playing good cricket shots. And I thought Australia played good cricket shots. In the last two games, they played a bit too much with the premeditation stuff. They got carried away with that early in their innings, but once they got set, Finch and Maxwell, for example, then they started to branch out into playing those switch hits, as we saw from Aaron Finch, the reverse sweep, as we saw from Glenn Maxwell, and then the ramps and then the paddles. They played them well towards the back end of the innings because they got set. They played good cricket shots up front. They played good cricket shots up front, and then they started to do the premeditation stuff towards the back end of the innings because they knew that Australia were in a good position and we can afford to play those shots to get extra runs. And that's what they did. So I was very impressed with that also from Australia's batting performance. So overall, as I said before, good batting performance from Australia. It's only taken them until the third game to click, but hopefully this will carry on for the rest of the series and hopefully lead to good results for Australia in the last two games and potentially come back to win this series. Australia's fielding was pretty good as well. They fielded well. They caught nearly everything, which was good. Their ground fielding was good, so the fielding was good from Australia. I thought their bowling was good, Australia. In the first two games, their bowling wasn't at their best, obviously. Excuse me. Wasn't at their best. But in this game, they bowled pretty well. I thought Ashton Agar bowled superbly for his 6 wickets for 30 runs. He bowled well. Best figures by an Australian bowler in T20 Internationals, so great work there from Ashton Agar. He bowled well. Riley Meredith impressed me on debut, taking 2 wickets. He's a real talent, bowling 150 clicks, and obviously going for a lot of money in the IPL auction. So I think the Punjab Kings, formerly known as the Kings 11 Punjab, will be very happy with their investment and their purchase of Riley Meredith. And hopefully positive signs for him ahead, especially in the IPL for Meredith after this brilliant start to his international career. Adam Zampa and Kane Richardson did well, taking a wicket each. Jai Richardson had one of those games where you don't take a wicket, and that happens in T20 cricket. Stoinis only bowled the 1 over. He went for 6. Same with Maxwell, went for 15. Didn't take any wickets. But overall, Australia's bowling performance was pretty good in this match. Much better than the first 2 games. They took wickets at regular intervals, which created that scoreboard pressure, put New Zealand under pressure because they knew New Zealand, the required run rate's climbing, and when wickets fall and dot balls happen, that required run rate goes up and up and up. And for New Zealand, they just felt the scoreboard pressure, and that's why Australia won this game and bowled them out for 144. So great bowling performance from Australia. Hopefully that can continue into the 4th game, and hopefully for Australia, level the series at 2-2 in that 4th game, because for Australia, they've got to keep winning. They can't afford to lose the next 2 games, otherwise the series is gone. For Australia, it's just about continuing on this momentum ride, because that's a big word in cricket, momentum. And once you get the momentum, it's hard to stop that momentum. For Australia, they've got to keep performing, they've got to keep winning, they've got to keep backing up the performances, and they're a good chance of winning this series. So overall, their performance in this game was pretty good. Obviously, we know how Australia can play, and they showed that in this game. Obviously, in the first 2 games, they didn't, but in this game, they did. So hopefully that can continue into the 4th T20 match, and hopefully into the 5th match, and hopefully that results into a series win for Australia. But overall, very good comeback, and for Australia, a lot of positive signs moving forward for the rest of the series. Let's talk about both teams' potential 11s heading into the 4th T20 International. New Zealand may keep the same team for the 4th T20, even though they lost this 3rd T20, but for New Zealand, it was just a bad day at the office. And that happens in T20 cricket, so it would be unnecessary to make massive changes following this defeat. But if they were to make a change, Mitchell Santner could return to the 11, but it depends if he's well or not. That's why he missed the 3rd T20 due to illness. If he is, then he returns, but if not, Mark Chapman could retain his spot in the 11. So the likely 11 could be Guptill, Seifert, Williamson, Conway, Phillips, Neesham, Chapman or Santner if well, Southey, Jamieson, Sodhi and Bolt. After winning the 3rd T20, I think Australia may make some changes to give other players a go before the series is finished. Maybe like Ben McDermott to come in for Matthew Wade to see how he goes with the bat. If that's the case, then Josh Philippe can keep wicket if Wade is out of the side. Maybe Jason Behrendorff and Andrew Tye to come in, and maybe come in for Jai Richardson and Kane Richardson, just to change up the bowling attack. With 2 games remaining in this series, Australia are running out of time to try out different players because Australia don't have many T20 games to play before that T20 World Cup. Those players I just mentioned can win games, and they have done before for their BBL teams. They can help Australia to win this series. So the likely 11 could be Finch, Philippe, Wade or McDermott, Maxwell, Stoinis, Mitchell Marsh, Ashton Agar, Jai Richardson or Behrendorff, Kane Richardson or Tye, Zampa and Meredith. Both teams may go with those 11s for the 4th T20 International, but we shall see. What can we expect in the 4th T20 at Wellington? Well, Australia have got some momentum after winning the 3rd T20 to get back into this series. That will boost their confidence, that win, and give them that belief that they can win this series. New Zealand had a bad day at the office, which happens in T20 cricket, but they are a good side and can bounce back. So both teams will be determined to win this fourth T20. If New Zealand win, then the series is won. For Australia, they need to keep winning to stay in the series. This fourth T20 is shaping up to be another exciting contest between these two sides. Well, that's the end of the innings, the close of play for this episode of the podcast. Be sure to subscribe and click the bell to get the latest episodes of the podcast. And like and share our Facebook page. Until next time, keep safe and bye for now.